delve into this, I think one of the biggest criticisms is that this movie doesn't, quote, know Batman. And I think that's our thesis in this episode, right? We kind of had to defend that. And I truly would say I think that that's a harsh criticism. I think that for those of us who know Batman, there's a lot of attention to the audience in different, Batman versions. And I think this is one of those films that knows we're there and knows we're listening, knows we're watching, and includes us in the party. And I think that just makes it a lot of fun. But I wouldn't sit here and say that, the director didn't know Batman or doesn't understand comics. And yes, I think that Joel had even said this is a living comic book. And there are some behind the scenes and interviews and things where he acknowledges that there's an outlandish element to this. This is hyperbole. This is fantasy. This is a dream. This is meant to be very exaggerated and very in your face. And I think that there's something to that about camp. And for scholars who study camp, whether in literature or in visual media like this, there's commentary about what camp means, right? Camp is about drawing our attention to, something that is outlandish and lively and actually is subversive. And it asks us to attend to that subversion. Why does this make us uncomfortable? Why does Jim Carrey's flamboyance make us feel kind of standoffish for some of the people who are criticizing it? Why do people want to characterize it as being superficial and meaningless and without purpose? And I think if we attend to it, even Joel himself at some point will say, this is about, using camp as the mask. This is the duality of Batman, which is all the authors you mentioned consistently will portray the duality of Bruce Wayne and Batman. And the fun of writing this character is, how do you portray that? Like, what modality, what themes, what artistic way do you want to tell that story? And I think for Joel, I never want to speak for this director, but I think a lot of the message is, yes, this is a giant Freudian party and we're all like in it, but that underneath that liveliness and underneath the neon, underneath the overacting are these tortured souls, these folks who, take Edward Nygma, who's this unseen scientist who no one ever pays attention to, who's kind of behind the glass, in the box, who breaks out of that and, no longer has this sense of isolation. And then, of course, Bruce Wayne is more comfortable in the mask and very uncertain, self-doubting, and morbidly depressed as himself in the Batcave. So I think, and I hope we can get into it more, but I think that the masks and the overt liveliness, I think, kind of serve as a little bit of distraction for us. And then, if we're willing to tolerate that, we're sitting with a lot of serious psychological themes that a lot of us can relate to. I mean, as a kid, I knew that, these were the outsiders. These were the folks who experienced thwarted belongingness and kind of being unseen and misunderstood. So I felt like this was a movie for me. Dr. Meridian, I think at the time I was just impressed with her. Like, how can we not be? She's probably all of us. I think she's a lot of us as we watch this movie, a little bit, in awe about what's going on around her. I say one of the few people that actually is kind of grounded. And you notice this, right? They dress her in all black, usually kind of like all black. She doesn't like talk too much. Anytime she talks, it's with purpose. I think she has a couple of like those like, one-liners that I think make this movie really fun. But she's the most grounded. She's kind of like the most steady of all the characters. And There are a couple of exceptions, but I'd say technically her technical psychological content, or what she actually says, is accurate. Kilmer as Bruce Wayne, I think, is the most thoughtful, is the most psychological, gives us a little bit more of his psyche and his motivations and his struggles. There's something about, and everyone has, like, look, everyone has their favorite Bruce Wayne. Mine's actually animated, but there is something really intriguing and realistic. If there's anything realistic in this movie, it's the psychology of Bruce Wayne. And I love that you bring up these deleted scenes, the extra in the script, and the things they even filmed. You can find it on YouTube. There, folks have posted, all of the deleted scenes. And you're right, it gives this much richer depiction of a man who's really struggling with the duality. And it's meeting both Chase Meridian and Dick Grayson that kind of, pushes him further into this struggle with his duality, realizing that this is not something he can really sustain, that he's hurting himself, that he's not resolving his trauma, and that he's very much, I think at one point he says to Chase that he's having, not only is he having the nightmares, but now they're happening when he's awake. I love that he describes it that way, because that's how someone would say it. So a psychologist like me would say that's a flashback, that's a trauma flashback, right? And what are the triggers and what are the antecedents? But he says, like, I'm awake and I'm now having these like nightmares while I'm awake. And you get a little bit of his vulnerability and his sense of unresolved trauma and applying it to what's going on in the story, which I think is fantastic. And these deleted scenes are absolutely like psychologically accurate. That giant, gruesome, like, 6 foot tall bat, as amazing as, I actually kind of wish that were in the film, but like in the final cut. But the idea of that is very accurate. Your fear is almost as big as you are, and you can't resolve this type of traumatic fear. You cannot resolve this intrusive, menacing, figure that's looming in your psyche. You do have to address the unresolved parts of that. And I love that in that deleted scene, he comes out of the cave. Who knows how long he's in there, but it's almost like a therapy session or something. He comes out, and then Alfred's like, what's like, are you okay? And he's like, I'm Batman. Like, this is what I'm meant to do. I do think that what they did really well, and what I've seen actually in the comics as well as in the animated series, is that Bruce sees this as a genuine relationship that is not to be exploited, that is not to figure out how he can expand his mission, but as a way to repair his own trauma. So I see this in, both the deleted scenes, but also the scenes that stayed in the film, where Bruce is wholeheartedly telling this young man, don't do the things that I did. Like, keep your integrity, keep your personhood, understand that yes, this tragic traumatic event really matters and really shapes you, but don't define your life by it. Like, I feel like he's basically telling Robin, don't follow in my footsteps, because I have made mistakes, I'm imperfect, and now I feel stuck in this life that I've created, and I want better for you. He genuinely feels that way about this kid because he relates to him. But I think this is also for him a reparative relationship too. His way of processing and correcting and overcoming his own trauma in a caring relationship. And I think, of all the things that you can get out of this film, that's one of the gems that for me is pretty clear. There was a very decisive point in the writing that, yeah, if we're going to have Batman and Robin, we've got to address how they came to be and what the dynamic is and how they kind of grow together. You can't tell me that final scene with Batman and Robin running towards us, or their silhouettes, their capes flying, the bat signal behind them, isn't moving. Like that very last shot is just so like awe-inspiring and tells me like this is a superhero movie.
The activist directors, comments and the lectures, fanboys, professional artists and professors. Maybe a nerd who's just like you, talking about the things that you like too. So I invite you to the NOC. In full color, you see me. The Hard Knock